Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick hurling podcast with your host Mark Kennedy, joined again this week by Kieran Collins and joined with birthday boy himself, Ruairi Walsh. Lads, how are things?
Good, Mark.
Very good, Mark. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Ruairi. I suppose in this episode, lads, we'll focus in on round 5 of the Munster-Leinster competitions, have a review of that, see who are the winner and losers, and also we'll have a preview of the under-20s. I suppose, guys, maybe we'll kick off with Munster Senior Hurling Championship round 5. Maybe we'll start in FBD Simple Stadium. Thurles, Ruairi, Clare travelling to Tipperary. I know last week you were at pains to tell myself and Kieran that this wouldn't be the foregone conclusion that many of us thought. How right you were, 124 to 24 points. I suppose get your thoughts on that Clare win.
Yeah, look, first thing I suppose conditions, Mark, there was what was close to a really strong breeze blowing down the pitch, and you could see it with the strength of Hogan's puckouts, like they were dropping into 21. And it was a tactic they weren't getting much joy out of, really, because what was very unusual, the Tip full forward line never scored from play, which is an unusual stat in modern hurling. Tip kind of raced into an early lead, as we saw, and Clare kind of had a really good spell second quarter, where I think we might have hit 5 points in the spin, and we're leading by 2 points going up to half time, and I suppose kind of a lapse of concentration, whatever it was, and teams went in level. So there was a numerous spells during the game, similar to the Waterford game the week before, where Clare looked like they were ready to, maybe give their fans kind of a comfortable last few minutes for once, but in each case it never panned out that way. Let Tip back in, and in fairness, Tipperary, as Liam Cahill had pointed out all week, we're going to, treat this game with the respect it deserved. He used it as a chance to, blood some players in, which, in hindsight, maybe could have been done earlier in the championship if they were doing a rebuilding exercise. But some of the guys went well for them. Like, I know Owen Connolly had been on and off the team, and Michael Breen limped off during the warm-up. So Owen Connolly got another chance and actually thought he did quite well, got a few points. Jake Morris as well, I know he got 5 points from centre forward and had been lauded, but John Conlon kind of ran the game from centre back, especially in the first half. I don't know how many possessions he had. Could have been over 20 possessions. He was just dictating the game. And I don't know, sometimes centre forward's job isn't just to maybe, get nice scores, get into pockets of space. Sometimes you got to do a bit of defensive work as well. And maybe going forward, that's something because I've seen comments saying Tip might build a team around Jake Morris, but that's something for them in the future. Maybe get a bit more tackling from him there, especially in that pivotal position. But anyway, Tipperary, as you said, shoved it up to Clare. Again, Clare coming down the stretch, ended up in a position they shouldn't have been in. They were 8 points up, playing with that breeze. A strong bench coming in there, and just kind of a lull, I suppose, the best way to describe it. And at this level, even against, let's say, the bottom team in the group, you drop your standards at all, and teams will hit you. I think Tip at 5 points and maybe a 3-minute spell there, and suddenly it was game on again. So look, if there's one thing for Clare to improve on between now and the Munster final, it's a mental thing really, where they just cannot let up, especially, from now on in the championship. You will be punished badly for it. They've gotten away with it in a few games because of the strength of the scoring burst they've had when they were on form. But from now on, it cannot happen again. And I'm sure that'll be one of the main talking points for Clare going forward. But look, job done. Some nice scores in the game as well. Shane O'Donnell gave another exhibition inside. It's the best year I can remember him playing. He's just, everything is sticking in there. And if any fault for Clare is just they didn't give enough ball in, really, shooting from far out. But as we said now, after we lost to Limerick, you'd take getting to a Munster final with 2 away games to come, having to go to Thurles and Páirc Uí Chaoimh. So job done, and 3 wins out of 4. They just have to credit the players, really, and the response they made from that Limerick game.
Yeah, look, I suppose we saw it last year where Tipperary were in the reverse, where they were the team playing for a place in Munster, and the team who were playing for pride in Waterford overtook them on the final day. And I suppose that probably was a live fear for a lot of Clare supporters, heading to Thurles on Sunday. I'm sure it was fresh in the minds, only been last year. Look, I suppose to be fair, Liam Cahill wielded the extra in the week, and there was 6-7 changes made to the team. I suppose players who hadn't been performing were dropped. And look, it's fair to say Tipperary are, if they weren't in the transition period now, they well and truly are at this stage. I suppose they are going to be buoyed by, looking at the underage teams and what they're proving. But look, underage success it's not to be all end all either, So I think the worry for me with Tipperary going forward is, I suppose, looking at certain personnel who might step away. And they're all leaders. Stone McGrath, Bonner Marr, Ronan Marr, all leaders in that team. And you're looking at the players who may remain there, and you're kind of wondering where these leaders are going to come from. You know, they're probably all going to be very good stickmen in their own right, but to take a game by the scruff of the neck when it's need be, like Noel McGrath and Bonner have done over the years, in that regard, I probably worry for Tipperary hurling. There's some lovely hurlers there, there's no doubt, but it's I suppose developing a team where it's not just 15 hurlers. I suppose it's attitude and it's the mental side of things as well. Like I suppose we talk about, Rory made a point about Morris there, building a team around him. Like Morris on his day is as good as any forward in the country, but he's lacking consistency. You could say the same with Jason Ford. Jason Ford, to me, seems to do all his hurling in the league, and when it comes to championship, he seems to go backward a little bit. And I suppose the early signs of Grode O'Connor seem to be the same, because he was unbelievable in the league and in the Fitzgibbon competition, and then championship, I think he's been really poor this year. So look, Tipperary, they have a lot of work to do, and I suppose the fight they showed on Sunday for Liam Cahill, I suppose, look, it is a positive. They could have easily just gone out in the field and not tried, but they did, and I suppose they kept the fight up, and I suppose that's a promising thing for Tipperary. In regards to Clare, look, I suppose Roy said, job done. I suppose, losing the first game out, it's always going to be a big task to bounce back, and I suppose they had the experience of it last year. It transpired to be the very same results as last year, winning the final 3 games. Third time lucky in the Munster final. I suppose the next 2 weeks will tell. Just one thing I suppose is kind of not concerning, but the kind of question is, what is the story with Tony Kelly? I would have thought if Tony Kelly was back to fitness, that game on Sunday would have been the game to play him in and get good game time into him. But I know he's coming off the bench and he's doing well, but just to get 70 minutes on the legs, and it's a big ask if he does start in the Munster final. We've seen the way these games have been over the last 2 years. To have the legs for that, it's a big ask. So I just wonder, is there something more, Rory, there with the injury, or is it just a matter of the team is going well and they're kind of using him as a finisher as opposed to starting there?
Yeah, it's hard to call with it, because I was the same as you. I think we even said last week, even start him, and if after 40 minutes, he's suffering lack of match fitness, but at least get 40, 50 minutes into him. So, look, I presume it's maybe just coming off medical advice. Like, it was an ankle operation he had. So maybe, I don't know, there's a different approach to bringing a player back from that injury, because, look, he had a setback after the Clare Limerick game, all right. Yeah, I presumed that he was ready for more, and he looked to be travelling really well when he came on. He instantly came on and he sprinted 30-40 yards to get a hook in. And, I think he was maybe kind of showing to Lohan in that moment that, I can still do the working part of the job as well. So yeah, like even after the game, Brian Lohan said he's available. In 2 weeks' time, he'll be available for a starting space. So I presume that's all you get out of these management teams these days, is just kind of a one sentence. Still no real word on David McInerney. Don't know what his injury is or what length of time, but he wasn't featured at all on the panel again. And as you know, Ryan Taylor is still, like, it's 11 months since Ryan Taylor is cruciate. So, it is on the longer end of a comeback. So, based on what I heard.
The only thing as well with the cruciate, like I think we've seen it in recent times with Sean Finn, it's not a case where you can just come straight back in. Yeah. And Munster final as well, it would be a huge ask to be thrown back into a game like that. And
especially the type of game he plays, Kieran, he's up and down the pitch, and that's his real positive thing for the team. But going back to Grode O'Connor, I was just thinking back to the early rounds of the league, as you said, Kieran, where he's going well, but maybe in hindsight, he was playing college game on a Wednesday night and then a league match. He's playing an awful lot for hurling for January, and he just looks a bit stale, like the freshness isn't there. And sometimes maybe, like, looking at these younger players, especially, just managing them properly, and especially early in the year when the pitches are heavy. I wonder, is that a factor with him? Because he is a talented player, as you said. Like, what Tipperary actually need is, they need this bunch coming the under-20s to actually come straight in as leaders. It has happened with teams before, where a young lad, like even Darren McCarthy, the last day of leadership he showed, and he's under 20 again next year. But guys like that can come in and lead straight away. Even looking Adam Hogan for Clare there has kind of come in and shown leadership straight away. And it does happen with guys. Kieran Joyce with Cork there when he jumped straight into the team. But Tip need about 4 or 5 of them to do that, which is a tough ask. But another thing as well, you mentioned the profile of Tipperary. The fact now that a lot of the guys are kind of, there's a bit of a gap in age now, isn't there? There's no real guys around the 26, 27 age that, have, as you said, have been consistent performers that you can kind of, be sure of their position for next year. Like, trying to write the starting team for Tipperary next year is you'd have somebody a year to year of 12 players, but I think you could name 25 players, and anyone from those 25 could start for Tip next year. Like, I don't think Liam Cahill knows, to be honest. And we said that after the league. He was the one manager that didn't really have a clue what his best team was going to be, and so it transpired.
But I think on top of that as well, there's certain players that I suppose on their underage success. I think Brian O'Mara was one of them. Even myself, I expected Brian O'Mara to slot in centre back and would be a mainstay in Tipperary hurling for years to come. But it hasn't transpired that way. I think he's struggling a little bit this year, and I think the fact that they're kind of chop change a bit, like Robert Byrne was centre back another day, and I think hasn't been mentioned is the loss of Seamus Kennedy to them. I think this year, I think that injury is huge for them. They've had lots to deal with, but yeah, I suppose look, there's going to be a lot of change in Tipperary, and I suppose time will tell whether it's going to be Liam Cahill or not. They have, I suppose, they made no bones. He was the man they wanted, and they have him now, and whether they stick with him or not. I saw an interview there and off the ball where it got a little bit heated with Shane Brophy, but I think though, if it's a case that they do part ways, question marks kind of come on to Liam Cahill now. It's maybe style of management, but similar things. Okay, Waterford didn't go down the same way, but after 2 years spell that parting ways with a team, it's not a good sign going forward for him as a manager. But I'm sure looking Tipperary, that's their decision to make. And
I think I keep him, Kieran.
Yeah, I think he knows Tipperary hurling. Yeah. He knows every player, and
that's it.
That's all you want.
Like, who are you going to bring in that would have more, a better knowledge of the players available? It would take them, trawling through what he's already done.
Yeah,
he has to be fully aware, keeping an eye on the under-20s as well. Of, he has to be in the best position, and I'd at least give him next year anyway. And if there is no progress next year, then a bit like Pat Ryan there this year. He was let's say a minute away from being, as we said, like having his job seriously. Now he's a hero.
The only thing is, if Tipperary do get over the line on Saturday against Offaly, Brendan Cummins probably goes into the hat there as well. What he's done with that 20s team. So
maybe bring him up with the present management as well.
Yeah, yeah. So
it's got to be an interesting one with Tipperary, isn't it? In the off season, particularly with the Tip County board that plumbed for Liam Cahill. Let's remember the facts here. Colin Bonner dispensed after a season. They really committed to Liam Cahill, who was in year 2 of Waterford. And you could have argued might have gotten another year out of Waterford if he really wanted to. So I think the Tipperary County Board, are in a bit of a quandary here. I mean, groundswell of opinion that I've heard from North Tipperary is that, maybe a change is required, but I don't think so. I think the County Board will stick resolute here, but I think it's fascinating enough. But as regards the likes of John, Noel McGrath, even Bonner Maher, look, lads, they owe nothing to that Tipperary jersey. All Ireland wins, All-Star wins. If these guys, I think Noel McGrath, delayed his departure from the pitch on Sunday as well. Ruairi kind of looked to me as if that was a bit of a lap of honour for him as well. I mean, they owe nothing to the county anyway, and it'll be an interesting few weeks here for Tipperary.
One thing actually, when Noel McGrath came in, it did lift the players. I think the players responded and figured they wanted to finish on a high. And in fairness, it 8 points down and bringing it back and at least having a close finish. There was a response when he came in. Just incidentally in the game, Conor Lean replaced Rory Hayes from the start. I expected a few more changes just to even freshen up 2 or 3 positions, and he went really well. So there's a kind of a conundrum, I suppose, for Loha now is, does he stick with the guy who played well against Tipperary against, a Limerick full forward line that if they get a supply of ball in are incredibly dangerous, and does he go and because last year I suppose starting the new guy in the Munster final, Keane Nolan there really backfired. So, does he go with Rory Hayes or does he go with Conor Lee now is going to be a question going into that he'll be thinking over the next 2 weeks.
There you go. Subplots of plenty here even. And we're not even in the week of the Munster hurling final. Suppose we'll talk about that further next week, Rory. Suppose, can we go to TUS Gaelic grounds here, Kieran? Waterford gave a good rattle here against Limerick for about 59 minutes, but I suppose the Limerick juggernaut kind of went into overdrive. 2-point margin went suddenly up to 10, game over. I suppose get your thoughts on this 30 points to 2-14 win for Limerick. Advances to a successive Munster senior hurling final.
I think, Mark, they played in, I suppose, 2 separate periods where they, really outscored Waterford. The first was the end of the first half where they outscored it from 10 points to 2 to take it. After Waterford got a goal, it went from 1-4 to 4, and Limerick added on 10 points to that fairly quickly. Credit to Waterford, they got back into it, and at one stage there around the 50-minute mark, there was only 2 points in it. But from then on, Waterford scored 2 points, and Limerick powered home, hit the 30-point mark. So, really impressive. I suppose there is a little bit of concern with injuries now. Sean Finn, obviously going off the last game. Shamie Flanagan, Darragh Donovan still not back. Obviously we know about Peter Casey, who won't be back. You'd imagine. All of a sudden you've some big guys injured and you're heading to a Munster final. And look, Shane O'Brien, when he came on, I thought he was unbelievable for a young guy. The game was still there and at an early stages of the game, and to come on and score 3 points, I thought it was incredible. Great performance from him. I think Kyle Hayes is having a good year, and I think one player that I think for me, for Limerick hurler of the year so far is Grode Hegarty. I think his work levels are up on last year, and I think he's just I suppose when playing on the half forward line and going into the full forward line at times is I suppose it's keeping the defence questioning, and so I think he's been really, really efficient this year for Limerick. And good to see Tom Morrissey, I think, getting a bit of back into a bit of form, scoring 4 points as well. Look, I think Waterford bought a gallant effort, but you look at it, 2-14, it's not a great score. 2 goals, you could argue, are on the soft side. I think the first one, Barry Nash, I think was completely caught off guard. Great finish by Shane Bennett, but the 2 goals, I think Limerick were disappointed to concede. But I suppose, look, hitting 30 points, that seems to be their target. And, I suppose the negative as well was 19 wides on top of that. So, 14 of them in the first half. So, while I suppose they were lucky to be ahead of half time, there is still an awful lot to work on. And I think it's something that the Limerick team have struggled at in times gone by is the shot selection and accuracy. So, look, there's great things there. 13 scores. But there's, I suppose, as there should be this time of year, there's still lots to work on. But look, I said, happy to be back in a Munster final, and I suppose the 2 weeks will be welcome, and I suppose hopefully that they can get, I don't think Shamie Flanagan will make it, but definitely Sean Finn and Darragh Donovan, I think would be a huge boost to get them back in.
Yeah, Rory, get you in there. I suppose your thoughts on that Limerick victory.
Yeah, Limerick their work rate, everything about them was up, considerably. It was. They were hunting in packs. They hounded Waterford. They never had a second to breathe. Turnovers, especially when Waterford went short in puckouts. As we saw, they took 2 goals off Cork by doing it. Probably did it even better this week, where they, really pressured the short puckout. As Kieran alluded to, that must be a worry. I think afterwards, John Kiley was, I don't know, it was kind of a strange one where he was saying, or we're hitting all our targets, and I don't know, he kind of paid over because the shot selection, some of those shots first half, and even some of them are saying they had 50 scoring chances, but some of them weren't scoring chances. Like shooting from 100 yards and it bouncing and rolling out over the end line isn't a scoring chance. It's like a soccer player trying to score from halfway and you count them as with the goalie still in the goal line. But anyway, I'm sure that has to be weeded out, and especially I think it was as well the lack of adjustment to the breeze, because you said it was 14 wides, Kieran, in the first half. At least 10 of them were at the right hand side of the post where the wind was blowing. It was just kind of the lack of adjustment. And again, we spoke about there how Gillan inside was so quiet, never scored from play, but he got hardly any ball in there. Think of the quality of ball he was getting for the Munster final last year. So and in other games, and then it was like Limerick had kind of decided that because Waterford were going to sit back, they were going to shoot from distance to kind of drag the Waterford players out. And when it wasn't working, I think they maybe could have, in the first half adapted earlier, because as Kieran said, they left Waterford in a game that Limerick were dominating possession, especially a half back line, kept Waterford in there, and with 55 minutes, 2 points in it. And I know it finished 10 in the end, but had a red card happened then or something like that, suddenly you're in trouble when you shouldn't be. So I think the 10-point win kind of maybe did paper over that, because that has to be a huge concern. Because in third, I wouldn't imagine in the Munster final they're going to get as many chances at or as much possession, so have to be a lot more clinical, which I thought they had been, especially up in Ennis that day, in a game where they were kind of hanging in there. They were clinical with some of the chances they got, but yeah, this was kind of the most wasteful I had seen them in a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, Kieran, going back to those 19 wides, I mean, you could credit Waterford at certain periods for the pressure, but I mean, it's going to be an interesting kind of side note here heading into this Munster Senior Hurling final. I suppose Kiley and Knock will be making adjustments accordingly, but I suppose can you see Shane O'Brien probably starting from the start here with a bit of a cohesion here with Aaron Gillan and full forward line?
Yeah, I don't think he was expected to come on. I suppose you look at the players who were, I suppose, in form in the league, and I suppose Donegal Dalek probably feels a bit aggrieved because of the performance he put in. You could say the same with Adam English. These guys have been coming on and and scoring well as subs in the games previous. So all I can say is he must have been going really well at training to get a reward for an inclusion. So why not? Like he's a big guy, and he's really good. He's a lot of potential, and I suppose maybe earlier in the league the league was gone, he was playing Fitzgibbon, so maybe they were kind of allowing him, or playing with the 20s as well, allowing him to develop with his age group. And I suppose now that they're out, he can concentrate on senior. And but I definitely don't think Shane McFlanagan's going to be back in. It looks like a hamstring, so you'll imagine 4 to 6 weeks at least. And I suppose I echo what Rory said about Gillan. I think Gillan is definitely in play, is not scoring like he should be. You can make a claim for a ball going in, but he didn't score. Awesome played last day, so that's what when that happens, like you need guys like O'Brien scoring. Tom Morrissey getting his 4 points, Grohl Hegarty getting his 2 or 3 points. You need these scores, and I think it'll come down to, I suppose, matchups when they look at Clare, and I suppose how they can get at them. But I think based on the performance Sunday, by all means you could see him there come Munster final day.
Absolutely. Rory, can we talk about Waterford? They've been eliminated from Munster Ireland Championship. David Fitz was at pains to say pretty proud of the efforts. I suppose get your reflections on the Waterford season as a whole. I mean, we were kind of writing them off during the league. They had a bit of a renaissance during the early rounds, and I suppose that draw against Tipperary and Walsh Park's really undone them here.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is, okay, they took full advantage of the Cork game at home, and we kind of highlighted that, that they were ready for an ambush that day. They had all their players back. Cork hadn't been going well either coming in there. First championship game in Walsh Park, kind of all fell for them. But you just wonder if that game was at the end of the round robin now, with the way Cork have been playing, would Waterford win that? I don't think they would. And even the game in Ennis, Clare kept them there. There was times where they could have been buried, like when it went out to 8 points, and Clare were very wasteful, and so they were kind of still there at the end. And in one way, look, we credited their character last week, and we can't flip back in that. There was an element to that, but also there was an element of Clare, missing goal chances and so on. So it's hard to know exactly where they are. Like still looking at their starting team and players they have, they're right up there. But this is another year that has to be seen as a failure, because 3 teams qualify out of 5. This is possibly, one of the worst Tipperary campaigns they've ever had in Munster Championship. Waterford just had to finish ahead of one other team then, with Tipperary, at the bottom, and it was that draw against Tipperary, that kind of cost them in the end, because they'd have had the head-to-head over Cork. Once they won the Cork game, they should have been qualifying really, but. So I think when they look back at it, Davey talked about how proud and everything he was. There has to be an element of disappointment there, because the likes of Tyke de Burke and these guys, Desi, who probably was a bit below par in the Munster Championship, the likes of these guys, they're not going to be there forever. And looking at what's coming through in Waterford, they've had a few barren years of minor and under 20s. They really need to get into All Ireland series with this team, and you just feel that if they did get there, in one-off games they are dangerous. And I think the fact that they haven't qualified yet again has to be bitterly disappointing.
Yeah,
but I think as well, if you look at the tactics of the weekend, they went out. It was like damage limitation. They didn't go to win the game, and it should have been all shackles off. It was last chance saloon, and okay, they were going to Gaelic grounds to play the All Ireland champions. But to me, they went there, I suppose, more concerned about what Limerick might do to them rather than what they can do to Limerick. Even the fact that Mikey Kiley, who was probably their main target man inside all year, was on the bench for me. That was, and the influence he's had on Waterford as a forward unit in the games to date, he's been huge for them. I agree on Desi Hutchinson. He has been very, very poor, definitely scoring from play. But the likes of Jamie Barron, Tyke de Burke, they are getting on in age. They will feel aggrieved, because I suppose 2 events this year, had they gone the other way, I suppose they were 4 points up against Tipperary, and had they got a point there, they would have took Cork on the head-to-head. That 65 at the end against Clare, had that game finished a draw, again they would have finished third. So they were close, but I do agree. It's practically the same team that's competed in 19 and 20 who were worse in the position Clare are now. They were number 2 to Limerick. They have slipped, and I think Davy has probably won over the Waterford public, and in the last 4 weeks he's won them over, and Jesus, would they be mad enough to keep him on for another year? But the way the talk is going, they could keep him on. Yeah, so it's really hard to know. I suppose the team is at an age now where you'd probably struggle to take him on if you're I suppose an inspiring coach or a manager trying to take on a team with the age profile of the team and probably the youth that's coming. It probably wouldn't be the most appealing team, compared to what other teams might be out there. But like on their day, they are some very good hurlers on the team, and Davy would have taken the credit if they had qualified. But it was a player intervention after the league that kind of led them to a change in tactic and a change of the way they played. And look, they were close, but they were still a good bit away as well. And I'd love to see Waterford win All Ireland someday, but I think the way they've been going about it the last couple of years is the wrong way.
And the one team like that beat Limerick this year, Cork, went at them and put Limerick on the back foot right from the start. And like that's what Waterford probably should have been looking at, rather than trying to say if we don't concede a goal, we'll be in the game, was kind of the mantra I think going into it. They didn't concede a goal, but conceded 30 points, which it backfires another way. But I was just wondering as well, Austin Gleeson, like, he hasn't been mentioned during it, but surely you turn to him. Even if he was just there as available off the bench, or like he has that bit of magic in him when you need it. And as we said, at 55 minutes and they're 2 points down, if you would have Austin Gleeson there to bring in, just a lift it would give to Waterford support in the crowd as well. Just whatever reason he didn't play this year, like it does make the whole team weaker and panel weaker. So look, that is another factor. Like you're looking at one of the most talented players who didn't commit for the year. Don't know why, don't know what's involved there, but surely, like for Waterford to win, you need everyone. Like
I think it was a mental thing. I think he was wanted. I think I heard an interview where he wasn't enjoying his hurling, and he wanted to take a break last year, but he was convinced to stay. And when it came to this year, his mind made up that he wanted at least a year away. So,
even if you went with a Shane O'Donnell type approach and let him sit in the couch for the league and come good come springtime, you know what I mean? So try something a bit different with him, but keep him going. But because I'd say he's just so naturally talented, he probably doesn't need to train the same level as other players. Look, he's probably a loss to the Munster Championship this year in a way, because he always adds a bit of magic to it.
Rory, I suppose, with Austin Gleeson, Waterford Hurling Championships coming fast approaching, so look, he'll be a prominent performer there as well. Look, I totally agree with you there, guys. I think there will be regrets in that Waterford side, particularly in the first quarter and midway through that third quarter. The run game did certainly work for Waterford, but they didn't do it nearly half enough, really, to be fair. And on reflection, like, they're relegated to 1B next season. No disrespect to the teams that are in it, but it is going to be a inferior competition compared to 1A, which is going to be completely cutthroat week in, week out. So I do agree with you as well. I think Davy probably, if he wants it, gets another year at Waterford. I'd say, just given how the season has ended, 1B promotion has to be an attainable goal for this Waterford team. And if they can do that, maybe additional Waterford supporters get on board, because remember at the start of the year when we were starting this podcast, the crowd was very low for Waterford, particularly with Walsh Park reopening. So you'd kind of hope anyway for Waterford that this is the platform, this is the baseline for them to continue on their kind of progression. But a good win for Limerick anyway, and I can't wait for next weekend. I can't wait for the preview of that Limerick-Clare game. I suppose, guys, we'll head to Leinster, round 5. There's a few decisions to be made. I suppose, Kieran, you were down in UPMC Nolan Park in Kilkenny. Keith Rossiter was at pains post-game. Talk about Bruce Springsteen and that Nolan Park pitch. But, I mean, a 1-point win for Kilkenny over Wexford. I suppose, get your thoughts on that encounter.
Yeah, I think the pitch definitely had I suppose both teams had to play on it, but it was this time of year you expect pitches to be in top quality, but that end of the pitch wasn't after the Bruce Springsteen concert. So I think it's the under-20 final coming this weekend. I think a lot of the Tip fans were calling for it to be moved. Like, it's if the pitch isn't up to that top quality that's needed for a final, it probably shouldn't be played there. But I suppose the decision was made before that. Yeah, back to the game. Look, I think there's never much between these two teams, and that's the way it has been the last couple of years. I thought Wexford started really well. I suppose midway through that first half, they were 6 points up. Took the goal well. I think Conor McDonald, he really has been working well the last couple of games and scoring well. The last 10 minutes of the first half and 10-15 minutes to start of the second half, Wexford completely switched off. They scored 1 point in that period, and in that same period, Kilkenny made hay and got back into the game. There was a contentious penalty decision that was given, and I suppose that goal was a catalyst to get Kilkenny back into the game, and in that same period ended up going 5 or 6 points up themselves. I suppose the plus for Kieran is that the fighting spirit in the players, that they at that stage 5 or 6 down kept the fight going to get back into the game, and I suppose get within one. And I think just the clock ran out on them. I think if there had been another 2 or 3 minutes, they were definitely in a purple patch and were definitely on the up. Possibly could have snuck a win maybe, but time came against them. I think, to be fair to Lee Chin, he's such a talisman and he's such a main player, but it's probably one of the quietest days I've seen him play. Really didn't have an influence on the game. Ruairi O'Connor scored 2 points, but I think he was not. He's still got through an awful amount of work and gave the pass for Keen Burns' late goal. But I suppose in and out of the game is what I describe it. As Keen Burns just mentioned him there. For a young guy, he's performing really well, scoring 1-3. I think sometimes defenders get overlooked, and I think Shane Reck is one of them players that his performances get overlooked all the time. But there isn't many players that can hold the quality of Owen Cody to a point in the game. He's just one of these guys, real man-mark performance, and I thought he was excellent on him. Kilkenny, I suppose, look, they relied on TJ from frees, and he was flawless on them. Hit his sideline as well. Paddy Deegan was immense. I thought he started centre back but moved into midfield. Richie Reid went back. Billy Ryan scoring 3 points, which is a change, as Ryan says.
1 point, Billy, no more.
Billy 3 points now. John Donnelly, I suppose, coming off scoring 7 points last week. Only getting a point. He was quiet. I think Kilkenny relied on, and Wexford did give away a lot of frees, and I think that's what I suppose at times kept Kilkenny in the game. But look, as I said, only the point between them. Look, it was a great chance for Wexford to get into a final. It wasn't to be, but I suppose coming away from Belfast, was it 5 weeks ago, there was talk of relegation battles. So the fact that they've even came in third and we're fighting for a chance for the Leinster final, I suppose it's a huge turnaround. That Galway game started off, I suppose, a bit of a change in results. Followed up with that result against Carlow, and while the performance on Sunday wasn't a 70-minute performance, I think when they did, when they were on it, they were really, really good. And bar that 20-25 minute period, that was the biggest letdown. I think if they had performed for 70 minutes, I think they would have won. But look, it wasn't to be. And, finishing third, and I suppose they're into the All Ireland series, which is where they would have wanted to be start of the year. And I suppose on top of, securing 1A league hurling for next year, I think already it probably has been a very good year compared to where they were this time last year.
Yeah, completely agree, Kieran. Rory, get you in there. Get your thoughts on that game.
Yeah, look, as Kieran said, Wexford had every opportunity to win it. And then when it looked like Kilkenny were going to pull away, they fought back at the very end and brought it right down the wire at the very end as well. Look, even looking from a Munster point of view, who you'd be playing, I'd sooner play Dublin than Wexford anyway. That's the way I look. Teams might be looking at it as well. They definitely, for me, when they're on form, even with the scoring power they have now, Keenburn has really added to the forward line. Another player to kind of take some of the burden of scores, from Lee Chin and Ruairi O'Connor, because and Kieran McDonald coming back into form as well. You then have 4 real dangerous forwards there, scoring forwards as well. And when they're going well, they're going to keep you in a game as well when things are going bad. Especially you still have that aerial threat too to launch a ball up towards Chin or McDonald, who are both very good in the air, and it can relieve pressure from the backs too, just being able to go along, because not every team can do that. From a Kilkenny point of view as well, look, they were forewarned here as well. Last year, there was a situation where Wexford were coming off a defeat against Westmeath and Kilkenny were already through, and there might have been an element of Wexford needed it more, whereas this time Kilkenny had to win to get to the Leinster final. For Wexford to go up there to their home patch, perform as they did, and be within a puck of the ball at the very end of it, has to be encouraging for Wexford, and they're going to be dangerous in the All Ireland series. Do I see them as All Ireland winners? Probably not this year, but after 1 point after 2 games, to recover the way they have and finish so strong in the Leinster Championship, they are, coming into the Ireland series, definitely very dangerous, over a one-off match as well. Just as well, though, Kieran, you know more than this than I would, but they do need to keep these guys fit, don't they? They can't afford injuries to the main guys we mentioned there. They have to stay on the pitch for Wexford, I think. And when they are all there together, like, they are a formidable team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The likes of definitely it was Conor McDonald, Lee Chin, and Roy O'Connor. I think for Wexford to perform and to have any chance of progressing, they'll need the three guys on top form.
Fantastic game. I mean, penalty shot in 52 minutes has kind of generated an awful lot of kind of social media debate here in terms of with the Owen Cody foul anyway. I don't know, get your views on that, Ruairi and Kieran. I mean, it is a foul, but it's outside the penalty, and if it is indicated as it's an attacking kind of opportunity, sure, he's a black card on the way. So I was a little bit confused on that decision, were you?
I don't think it was a black card. I think, it wasn't a clear goal scoring opportunity. There was 3 Wexford defenders there. There was an incident in the first half where it was 1-on-1, and that probably should have been a black card and a penalty.
Yeah.
But a 21-yard free and possibly yellow at most. That's what it should have been.
Yeah, Rory, you'd agree with that?
Well, I'd 100% agree with that. Yeah, it wasn't in the penalty area unless it was a drag down player through with a goal scoring opportunity, which it wasn't. He was running a cross goal. It could have ended up being a goal scoring opportunity, but at that moment it wasn't when he was fouled. So the rule there is it's 21-yard free, so he seemed to fall between 2 rules, because, as Kieran pointed out, if he was given a penalty, then it was a black card, which he didn't give the black card. So he fell into a grey area, because the rules should be black and white. We all found with football when it first came in, the whole black card incident, was it a drag down? Was it not? Was he checking? It was very messy for a few years, but this rule should be straightforward. Goal scoring opportunity, player running through and goal, drag down, even if he's at the 21-yard line, that's a penalty if he's facing through and goal. If a guy's going across with defenders there and he's fouled, that's not a penalty if he's outside the area. So I think I'd agree with Kieran. It was 21-yard free.
The other thing, the interpretation of the black card penalty is drag down. And the only that incident where Matt O'Hanlon and Cody in the first half, or Massey Keown, he actually wasn't pulling him down. He was actually pulling him back as opposed to dragging him down. So look at technicality as such, but we shouldn't have grey areas. It should be black and white. And I think that's the problem with officiating at the minute, is there's so many grey areas and loopholes in rules.
Yeah, I think we had this debate last year, Kieran, about, we were saying the wording should be changed to denying a clear goal scoring opportunity. I can't remember who it was, a player, he was caught a ball and he was turning, and the opponent pulled the hurley and he couldn't get his hurley free. He was straight through and goal, but because he wasn't dragged down, it was a 21-yard free and it wasn't a black card penalty. Do you know what I mean?
Conor Cleary was probably involved in that, was he?
I actually think it was Aaron Shanahan who caught the ball.
It's the usual stunt to Cleary's, isn't it? Manhandling and pulling hurls.
Well, usually he himself and Gillan get up to a bit of sumo wrestling, all right. It's 6 of 1 and half a dozen. We've that to look forward to again anyway.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, next week. Fair play. Yeah, I suppose good win for Kilkenny anyway. They're on to the business end of the Leinster hurling final. I know Derek Ling was at pains to talk about improvement and mantra afterwards. The middle third, I think, still is a little bit of a work in progress. There's a few injuries there. As you mentioned there, Rory, Paddy Deegan, outstanding when he went to midfield, 3 points. Particularly Billy Ryan as well. Maybe this is a new kind of performance level here for Billy.
He needs to back it up now.
I think he definitely has to, because I'm seeing Adrian Mullen's absence here, Kieran, and it looks quite kind of ominous here for Kilkenny. If Adrian Mullen is nowhere near this Kilkenny starting lineup, this forward line is going to struggle now. Competition is going to really heat up here, and they need all their best players, particularly in the forward line.
Yeah, he was named on the bench but didn't feature. But he's a game changer, really is, when he comes on. The one thing I would, and last year is Tom Phelan's form. He was a player who he would have been, if Kilkenny went on to win, he would have been the man of the match for Kilkenny in the final, taken off at half time, and really didn't have any impact in the game. So while the forwards are on any day can be very, very good, it's consistency, very, very likes of Tipperary in that, where it likes of Massey Keown, Billy Ryan, Tom Phelan. It's when you think of Kilkenny forwards, and their teams in the past where they did it day in, day out, seem to be struggling a little bit there. Chop changing a good bit with 6 as well. It's not nailed down. Paddy Deegan, obviously Richie Reid. I think Paddy Deegan is probably better playing wing back midfield. I think definitely because he's such an impact going forward. But there is, I suppose, it's not a nailed down team, and there is concerns going into an Ireland series. I think Kilkenny have regressed a little bit on last year when they hit Croke Park, and when business is business, I suppose they will turn it on. But from this time last year to now, I think they have regressed a little bit. And I suppose you're looking at the bench on Sunday and who could come on and have an impact in the game. And okay, there is a couple of young guys there, like Owen Wall. I think Rodun looks really, really good in the 20s for them at the minute. Billy Drennan, I suppose, is there, but the jury is probably still out on him. But I suppose the concern is TJ is not going to keep going forever. When he does step away, they still do heavily rely on him. Is who's going to take the mantra up for Kilkenny when TJ steps away. There is still question marks on Kilkenny at the minute, but we do know how they can, on any day, they can perform, especially in Hickrow Park.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose, guys, we'll move on here. Pearse Stadium, Salt Hill on Sunday. Dublin travelled to Galway. An 8,000 crowd here really indicated what the public were really thinking of this Galway senior hurling team. And I mean, 14-man Galway departing from the championship here, Ruairi. I suppose being based here in Galway, there's been an awful lot of retros already being done in terms of the season that was. But I mean, devastating loss for Henry Shevlin and Galway here, but fully deserved win for Dublin.
Yeah, and I'm just going to start with what you said about the crowd. Like, this was a do-or-die game for Galway, county we consider like with a huge hurling area. Where were their fans? Like, just get behind the team. It's the last match in the championship against a Dublin team that were in good form coming into it. Like, this was never going to be an easy game. Like, that should have been packed. Like, and it just, like, it must be disappointing for the players even to kind of run out and expecting a raucous home atmosphere and, to see empty seats and, empty terraces. And like, that's the first thing. Like, the crowd have to take, have to really, like, it's grand being a supporter when you get to an All-Ireland final, but these are the moments where, you need your support when games like this. But I thought Galway actually started the game quite well. I know they had the breeze to begin with. Goal was a sucker punch, but they responded really well, went out to 4 or 5 point lead. I just thought like that the way the breeze was, out in Salt Hill, it was going to nearly need to be around the 8-9 point mark to, be quite comfortable in it. And just at half time, you sensed that they were not far enough ahead. It was going to take a couple of goals in the second half, maybe even 3 goals to keep them in it, because Dublin were going to be able to score from distance. And with the likes of Crummy and Donald Burke there, they get space, which they were going to against 14 men. They were going to punish, and they did. Took some great scores from distance and kept that kind of gap with Galway all the time. Galway maybe got it down to 3 a couple of times, but every time Dublin responded and put it back out 4 or 5 points, kept Galway at arm's length. Look, I suppose Colm Lyons became centre of attention with the red card incident. And for me, look, I can see why it was given as a red card, because look, the referee has seen it at real time. And at real time, it looked like he doesn't have the benefit of the replays where we could see that. And even I know Jackie Turle at half time is pointing out that the contact with the head moved because the heads made contact with each other. But like, when the ref has seen that at full speed, and he did go over for a second opinion and probably said to the linesman, "Did you see what I saw?" I would be more disappointed with the penalty incident. Like Jason Flynn, I know in our WhatsApp group we were talking about it. Yeah. Where Jason Flynn is facing the ball trying to catch it. The Dublin defender has his back to the play. I don't know, it's like a WWE move there that drags him down to the ground. And you can see from the angle, Colm Lyons is actually looking straight at it. And I do not know how that is not a penalty. It is the most blatant penalty. And if I was a Galway fan who's feeling aggrieved for the red card, I could see why it was given. It was at bordering on the harsh side when we saw 3 or 4 replays. But even, look, it's a debate all week, which means there are different views on it. But I don't think anybody could look at that incident and say it wasn't a penalty. I don't know. For me, they're the calls that have to be kind of made. And the game is incredibly difficult to referee. Like, we know the pace of it, and like these incidents, sometimes like what is shoulder to shoulder, what's shoulder to chest. Like, it's very minimal. Like, you're talking about centimeters between a really good tackle and also a one that's dangerous, and the ref has to make split-second decisions. But other incidents like that are clear and look stonewall, they're the ones that I'd be a bit annoyed about, really, and that's the one I think was the major one. But look, going back to Galway, I think the first half, like, that was the area they needed to make use of the breeze, and they didn't quite as such. And look, it's I saw a stat in the week where they were saying the 2017 team, like, you're still looking at 11 of that team featured, or it could have been 12 by the end of it, featured over the course of the 70 minutes. Like, that's 7 years ago now. I know some guys like the likes of Tom Monaghan have kind of come in, maybe found a place at times, but none of them have really nailed down spots. I know Jack Grealish, maybe cornerback, has booked a trend there, but like, you're going back to kind of guys who their best performances for Galway have definitely been behind them. And every now and again, you will get a major performance from one of them, but to rely on maybe 7-8 of these guys to keep producing. So, yeah, and for me, from the very start for Galway this year in the championship, they're just a disjointed. Their forward line weren't playing as a unit. First half, I actually thought it was the first time where they actually looked like they were playing together and giving the ball to the guy in the best position and so on. But they looked completely disjointed for me. Weren't playing for each other. And I don't know, we don't know the insides of it here, whether there's an atmosphere with management. I don't know, because they weren't firing on all cylinders in this championship, and they are a better team than what they have played. Our players to shoulder the blame here. We spoke about supporters. It looks like the problem with Galway looks a combination of everything. It's not an easy fix. Good managers have gone in there. They can't all be wrong. You look back at some of the managers they've had over the last few years, there's definitely an issue here with players gelling and getting performances out of it. Yeah, so it's whoever, if Henry is there next year, great time for Henry Shefflin, and I think we all love to see things go right for him. With in management role, especially with Galway there, and he's poured his heart and his soul into it. But if they're looking for a new manager, who really would want to step in there? Because for all the talent they have, trying to get a team together that's a formidable unit rather than coming out with one-off performances, it's a tall task.
Yeah, Kieran, get you in there. I mean, what do you have to say after that 6-point win for Dublin?
Yeah, look, I think it's been highlighted the last couple of days. Could be wrong on what potentially people think is wrong. I suppose they had an All Ireland winning manager in Micheál Dunu. He parted ways over disagreements with the board in 2019, and he arrived to Saltail with a Dublin team, to try and defeat his own county. I think Dublin have really been improving, definitely since that Wexford game. I suppose got the rub of the green on the day, getting 2 late goals, kick-started them. And I suppose they beat the teams they had to beat. They accounted for Antrim well. They beat Carlow, probably was their worst performance. It was a Carlow game, got the win. And I think they took great confidence last week going to Nolan Park. Sorry, it was Parnell Park. It was Kilkenny going to Parnell Park, and probably unlucky not to come out on top of that battle. A late goal to win it for Kilkenny. So they were coming with top confidence, top of their game coming into this game, and I'm sure this game was probably talked about a long way out that it might come to this, and they've had the up on Galway over the last couple of years. They've 4 wins in championship. This is probably 5 now over Galway teams with Galway management. So they knew the ins and outs of it, and they were full deserved for the win. I think, look, definitely the right car was a factor. For any team to lose a player after 4 to 18 minutes, it's going to have a factor in the game. Galway were going okay at that stage, but look, to be fair to Dublin, they still had to go and win the game, and they did, and won it comfortably in the end. Donald Burke, out for a long time injury, and he's come back in, and gradually, week by week, he has improved, and scoring 110, 1-5 from play. That's Donald Burke at his best. Chris Crumry, huge performance, scoring 4 points. And actually, one point is, it's something we probably would have said last year was, outside of a certain core group of players, the scores were coming from. They were struggling, but Dublin had 14 scores the weekend. So it's a positive. They're building on scoring strength. Sean Curry getting the goal, Dara Power scoring 3 points. So they have improved. Look, I suppose the league was poor, but you take league form with pinch of salt last couple of years for teams, but I think they have week on week they have improved, and I think they've earned their right to be in the Leinster final, and I think they definitely give Dublin a game or Kilkenny a game. They'll have learned a lot from last week, and I think the open space at Croke Park would suit Dublin because they're a running team. I think they'll fancy themselves going up against Kilkenny, and I wouldn't write them off completely. Regarding Galway, it's very hard to see Henry Shefflin being there next year. I think Galway, as Ruairi said, there is a core group of players that are there since 17, 18. This is going to be crushing, for a Galway team to pride themselves on, and any team you'd expect to be in the All Ireland series. I saw an article earlier from Jeffrey Linsky. He was on a Galway podcast where I suppose he talked up the differences in Galway with underage compared to Cork and Kilkenny, where say Mick Fennelly is in with a overlooking, I suppose, athletical development in players underage, and I suppose Cork have targeted it. We've seen the success they've had, and I suppose his point was the lack of it. And he also referenced he 3 interviews for the job for the senior manager, and Eddie O'Sullivan, the rugby manager, was one of the interviewees on the panel. And his point is like, what does Eddie O'Sullivan know about hurling? And why was he there? So very good points to bring up. We talk about Tipperary in a rebuild; they're in it. Galway probably are in a rebuild too, and maybe there might be a little bit of denial about it, but. Yeah, I think that there's definitely going to be a lot of change in Galway over the winter.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there because, I'm based in Galway, located beside the Castlegar GA club grounds, and it's been a very lethargic season for the Galway senior hurlers. There hasn't been a razzmatazz here, particularly in this side of the parish now, no East Galway and everything else, but they've had opportunities here to put a statement of intent out there. The Limerick game, particularly in Salt Hill, last regular season league game, that was a massive opportunity. Shane O'Brien getting sent off after 20 minutes never really got the opportunity to avail of that. I would also kind of lean towards the championship as well. The home games have been very kind of stop-start, and I would kind of point to David Burke sending off as well. There's been a bit of a catalogue of late hits going in from Galway players. I can think of Daithí Burke, particularly against Carlow in the first round. If David Burke's getting sent off, Daithí Burke, who should have been walking the line here as well. There's a few kind of contentious challenges as well going in the league, so maybe the officiating crew was kind of taking note there. But yeah, it's a very tough job for any hurling manager to come into in Galway. I think there's an awful lot of dynamics here, and I think Ruairi, you hit nail on the head here. There's been an awful lot of hurling brains coming in here to actually try to put together an All Ireland winning team since Mike Micheál Donoghue, and it hasn't worked. It can't be all down to the manager here. And maybe it's the fundamentals in terms of the hurling structures. Maybe it's to do with the senior hurling championship at the moment. There's still, in my opinion, a fairly bloated county championship when you consider the likes of the Clares or the Limericks, where there's an awful lot of competitive games with 6 to 8 teams in a Premier Division. That's not happening in Galway, and there is kind of a wrangle every year in terms of relegation. I think the competitiveness of the club championship here sometimes leaves an awful lot to be desired. So I think from a Galway County Board perspective, there's an awful lot of thinking to have to go on. I think Shefflin will probably try to commit for another year if he's asked. But I think Galway County Board really have to sit down and really talk to the hurling clubs here in terms of how they revitalise and energise the championships here and really try to identify and turn out players because, as you said, 2017 was a pivotal year here with the All-Ireland final win. Hasn't happened since then. And I think the ironic thing here is Micheál Donoghue and Franny Ford developed a game plan here to really kind of expose that Galway middle third, and that's what exactly happened here. So,
but I think as well, Mark, if you look at the young players that Galway have tried, like TJ Brennan, Kieran Killeen, Liam Collins, like Declan McLaughlin, who scored a goal on the weekend, like they've all been around the last, I suppose, maybe 2-3 years, and without getting a good chance, like either, there will come a stage where Daithí Burke, Grove McInerney are going to step away, and how do you replace guys? Because the likes of TJ Brennan, who I would have thought would have been the option, the choice to come in full back, they just don't have the experience to step into the role. So while they have probably played a lot of players, they still lack experience, and I think usually, like Tipperary, are going to lack leaders. When the likes of Daithí Burke, Grove McInerney, Conor Whelan, I know probably has more in him, these guys start stepping away. It's very hard to replace the leadership and I suppose the attitude they bring. So, there is players in Galway. There always has been, and they've always done well underage. But is it that bridging gap between the 20s to the seniors seems to be the biggest issue for them?
Yeah, a strange one for me as well, Mark, was Cathal Mannion not starting. I know he hadn't been in form, but especially with a breeze like that, where you want a player who can pop back, like Burke did for Dublin, shooting from distance. And Mannion, is a very accurate striker of a ball. And just the way it was set up for a guy like Mannion to, maybe get into a kind of a loose role, play a false full forward role and get out the pitch. And I just thought, look, in a day where you need a sharpshooter in windy conditions, it just kind of baffled me a bit. And to make your point as well, or to add to your point, Mark, about the club championship, it's not a good sign when you see the same club winning championship after championship. So you had St. Thomas's, for the strength of the championship, who've dominated the last few years. Previously to that was Port Sumner. I think Galway need a real competitive championship. Like you're looking at Waterford and Ballygunner, is it healthy for Waterford senior team in general? Doesn't seem to be. You know, I think you need more competition, and you're right there. Need other clubs to step up and have a right championship, because Galway really need it at the minute. They need something to kickstart the county team, because and it even goes back to that league game, as you said. Like, that was the first warning signs, and there was warning signs all through, and to kind of like expect to turn it on then in the last round, you know, it's a tall order. And it's, in one way, it's no surprise with the way they have, looking back in hindsight now. We were predicting a Kilkenny-Galway final to start with, but you know, that the signs were there from the start. Really, we just probably weren't paying attention.
And you know, as well, with the, I suppose, the signs you mentioned, like we did talk about them as it happened. There was never a kickback. Like, there was never like that Wexford game. I'm sure that dressing room was very, very low after that. You know, coming down, losing by 8 points. That was the fashion they lost. But that next came out, like, they never played with pride, or there was never a response from it, like, which is worrying for a team, that when you don't get a response. What is the story with Eamon O'Shea, Mark? Was he still there, or?
I think he'd moved away from the role, really, in the last few weeks, from what I heard. He was in training early on. I think players had, from what I could gather, were very receptive of that, but I think there may have been a clash of styles here. Just speculating here on my part, but I think you would have seen in Wexford Park here, Kieran, there was an altercation between Henry Shefflin and Eamon O'Shea on the sideline. There was two schools of thought going on here, to be perfectly fair, and it's a worry. I think it's a worry for Galway, and an awful lot of respects here. But I suppose all credit to Dublin here. I mean, they've gone to Pearse Stadium, Salt Hill, they've gotten a result, and I think, to be fair to Micheál Donoghue and Franny Ford, they devised a perfect game plan. They're into a Leinster hurling final, and I mean, what a boost this could be for hurling in Dublin if they could actually manage to win a Bob O'Keefe here. And look, they've seen how competitive they've been against Kilkenny and Purnell Park. I think that'll be a tantalisingly great game on Saturday week. I suppose, guys, quickly, Antrim, Carlow, tension in Corrigan Park, plenty. There was a contentious red card to Chris Nolan at the end of the first half, and goals win games, and Antrim got them at pivotal points here, Ruairi, and Antrim secured their passage to Leinster again next season. Carlow, 1 year stay in Leinster Senior Hurling Championship concluded. I suppose, get your thoughts here.
Yeah, look, there has to be some sort of a promotion relegation, though. So I see the situation of, a team needs a few years to build, but you have to be fair to the Joe McDonough teams as well. And giving a team maybe an exemption from a year does make the championship a bit phony, you know what I mean? So I can't see a better system than they have at the minute. It's just unfortunate, you know, that sometimes there is a yo-yo effect with teams. But like, Carlow were very close to, like, the red card was massive, like, and the funny thing was, it was given after half time. So there was a time at half time for management all to get not management, but the referee and officials all to get together, discuss it. And if somebody said they saw a strike from Chris Nolan, then they missed. Like, we saw it on TV, there was no strike, it was a push. I know it was shown he was kind of, obviously his temper was up, he was brought away from the argument, came back in of his own accord, but he didn't strike anyone. There was no punch thrown, no strike for Hurley. Look, it was a big push or whatever. It's a yellow card, and the fact, like, he is their talisman, he is their top player, he's the guy that, you know, that can catch a ball from you know, that's 25-75 against and win dirty ball, and without him, you know, it was going to be a massive tall order up there. We spoke about how hard it is to go up there, but they were, up until that point, they were well in the game. And the goals were the big turning point. The star for me, for Antrim, James McNaughton, has been electric now. He's what did he get the last? I think it was 2-3 or something from play. Like, he is a real star for them. Like, he is like, Antrim, there is talent coming through there in Antrim hurling, and we spoke about before, geographically, like, it is tough for them. From their point of view, they'll be delighted to have another year, and hopefully they can build on it as well. They had their big win this year over Wexford. They just need to be now a bit more competitive. Maybe do what Dublin did this year and kick it on another level and just get in, somehow try and get into that top three. Maybe step in there ahead of a Dublin, especially if Galway are going to be going through a rebuilding phase. But that was another game they were well in until they got a red card that day. The main incident was the red card, and for me, from what we could see on the footage to show in the Sunday game, it did not look like a red card. And the fact that they had 15 minutes to deliberate and they came up with the decision of a red card makes it even worse, I think, because somebody had to be sure that it was a strike or a punch, which it wasn't. So even you'd wonder, like, could somebody not have pulled out a tablet somewhere in the referee's room at half time and just had a look back at, if it was GA go or whatever, if they could access the footage. I know there's not meant to be a TMO, but in a quiet room, if just somebody look again and see, is there a punch, is there a strike? Because it has such an effect. And basically, it was a massive part in Carlow being relegated was that decision.
Yeah, Kieran, get you in there. I suppose get your thoughts on that win for Antrim.
Yeah, James McNaughton, I suppose I saw him in flesh there a couple of weeks ago, and look, he was the catalyst to that Antrim win over Wexford 2, created the 2 goals, really impressive, just run straight on the middle. There's no messing about with him. Conor Cunning scoring 2-7. The thing about Cunning, he can do that, he can bring in big scores, but he seems to lack a bit of consistency with it week on week. But look, McNaughton has been huge from this year. You do feel sorry for Carlow, like they went to the performance was good. Chris Nolan, he scored a great goal in the first half as well. Marty Kavanagh scoring 1-11. That was the change in the game, was that red card. And look, call a spade a spade. What the hell was James Owen doing reffing the game after the farce in Walsh Park? He shouldn't be letting ear whistle. That game earlier in the year. So we must be very badly stuck for referees to have him going up to Antrim. So such an important game for 2 teams, and for it to be decided with a referee decision, we're talking about referees too much lately, and it's not fair. And teams are putting work in all year, and we all saw the footage back. It was a clear push, but it was no different than what else went on in the. It was all handbags really, but it was no different than what else went on, and there was no dirty strike for what I could see. And I think, as Ruairi said, it was a very good point, given it at the start of the second half, where if they'd gone in at half time and Tom Mullally says, right, we're down a man, they could have made changes to suit and try and come up with ways against it. But to be struck with that blow just before the throw in the second half is unfair. And then, look, as I said, teams are training hard and working hard. Carlow no different. They've been performing. To be fair to them, they have put in 5 very good performances. Well, probably 4 very good performances out of 5 in the championship. Didn't deserve to go down, and they definitely didn't deserve to go down in that manner. They deserve to go down and fighting at least. They didn't get a fair chance for that. So the sooner that James Owens is struck off for all our sanity, the better, because how many strikes can the man get? In 1 year, within a couple of weeks. Yeah, that's my take on it anyway.
I'd love to see referee match reports, just in terms of these sort of instances. What was the thought process? You see it in certain sporting professions, in terms of rugby league as well, and disciplinary matters, a bit more visibility in terms of how the decision was brought about, because we're just speculating, we're middle of the week here as we're podcasting here. So
and he's actually, James Owens is the type of referee where if you ask him, he wouldn't tell you. So I don't know. Just, it's not fair in teams though. Just, to put in such hard work.
The debate that's going on, sorry, Kieran, the debate that's going on about should there be 2 referees? At the minute, I'd say no, because you'd end up with 2 bad referees instead of 1 bad referee.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But there are enough officials there. The support some of the refs are getting as well from officials are, he obviously, they had a debate, and James Owens has had some howlers, and they're even going back, I don't want to be going back to Clare incidents all the time, but the Aidan McCarthy one was one of the first ones, and the very next match Clare played in championship, James Owens was down to referee it again the next year. So it was basically the GA saying this man is staying no matter what, and if you're not happy with him, tough. So yeah, look, it's the official, the whole team. I think, as you pointed out last week, umpires, they should be properly trained. These games are too big, and the players are putting in too much for howlers to win. The under 20 one, which we're going into in a minute as well, was the main. And it in one way kind of ruined the whole result, because Tipperary was such a great game. It took a bit away from their win for me, having that hanging over it.
And if they do go on to win the All Ireland, it still takes the gloss off it for them, because I'm sure Cork would feel, only for it, they should be there. So
I actually, that goal in Gaelic Grounds had to be christened the Tipperary goal, because they got the ghost one there at the time against Waterford when the ball didn't go over the line. They got saved this time when the ball did go over the line, and then they got that penalty we spoke about, the James Owens one, out by the sideline in that goal as well. So it's a Tipperary goal in the Gaelic Grounds anyway, because every decision there seems to go for them.
It's a bit of a jinx goal, to be fair. Guys, look, commiserations to Carlow, but congratulations to Antrim. I know it was a tense encounter there anyway. Darren Gleeson was pains to mention that as well. And also Keelan Malloy as well, chipping in with 3 points. I think his best position with Antrim is midfield, and he came up trumps as well. I suppose, guys, we'll get on to the under-20s hurling championship final. I know we've reneged on it in recent weeks, just given to the sheer volume of inter-county senior hurling championship games. But this is an absolutely fascinating encounter here. It's a rematch of the minors from 2 years ago, Offaly facing Tipperary in Nolan Park. And I suppose Rory, can we get your thoughts on this? What are you looking forward to most on Saturday evening here?
Yeah, do you know what? I think the fans here have spoken here, and the fact that it's sold out in hours tells you the quality of both teams. I suppose with Offaly, you have kind of this team have really captured the Offaly hurling fans. Like, they give it their all. They're coming out of tight games all the time. Shows real character in the team. They have a real talent. One of the most exciting underage talents we've had for a long time in Adam Streeny. And it's not just him. Like, he has been, in one way, it's probably doing a disservice to the rest of the team with all the focus he gets. Because like they even Dan Ravenhill getting injured and missing out this year, and like the way the team have responded, like, and he's one of their main men, get to another All Ireland final without his availability. It just shows us the strength of this group. And like, let's not forget, like, most of these guys still have next year as well. A lot of these Offaly players are still underage next year, and for them to back up last year's All Ireland appearance with another one. And I think this year, like last year, by the end of it, they were just, I thought, physically outmatched by Cork. This year, I think like they're another year older and bigger, and I just think like they're going to be right in there with Tipperary, and this game is going to be, even I said a quick look at the odds earlier, and they can't be separated by the bookies, and that's the way I see it as well. And also, not to just mention Offaly, but like Tipperary, we spoke with Darren McCarthy earlier when he was playing with Nina. This guy won North Tipperary Senior Hurler of the Year last year at the age of 18. Like, and that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at two top talents, and like people, like players that put bums on seats. And I'm really looking forward to this game. And it's just a pity that this is all happening. And the reason we haven't been speaking about it is it's kind of the under-20 champions going in under the radar because there's such a barrage of games going on. And it is kind of taken from it in one way that we don't, on a Tuesday night, maybe on a YouTube stream in TG Carr, and fair play to TG Carr for showing these, you wouldn't see them otherwise. There's no real time to even like think about going to some of the games as well. They're just happening thick and fast. And maybe if the under-20 championship had a gap, even in July somewhere, to just give it a bit of a, because it's a great championship. Now it's kind of over before we know it, like, especially with no All Ireland semi-finals now. It's just straight into a final and that's it. But yeah, looking forward to all the same.
Yeah, Kieran, get you in there as well. I suppose, what are you looking forward to on Saturday night in Nolan Park?
Look, I suppose it's, as Rory said, it's a repeat of the minor final a couple of years ago. I think that extra hunger probably Offaly will get from that, especially the manner they lost, the late goal to where he got the goal mode scramble, and Greeny is being the highlight name, and I suppose it had, in everyone's lips. I think Dan Burke has been pivotal as well for them, scored 4 points again against Dublin. Dublin, to their credit, like, O'Dooley had a penalty save there early in the second half, and it could have been a different game. Like, to be fair, the Dublin did put it up to them, and we talk about the Dublin senior team and how well they're going, but I suppose it's a good sign for what I suppose, and why Micheál O'Donoghue, who's travelling up and down from Galway, is there is probably players coming as well. But I think it's going to be a really good final. I think Tipperary would probably there with a certain element of luck. I suppose that goal had it been given, Cork definitely were coming back. I suppose Tip had gone up 5 points early in the second half, and Cork were they made a couple of changes and they were finishing the stronger team. And I think they'll rue obviously that goal chance, but also 16 wides, in that game. And I suppose like Cork would feel they definitely had a chance to win it, and 11 of them wides were in the second half. So look, the two teams are there merit, and full house. I'm sure the Offaly crowd will probably outnumber Tipperary because they're following this team like with huge numbers, and I suppose they have done all along. It'll be a fair, I suppose, carnival atmosphere before it, and Saturday evening, and the weather should be good as well. So that'll all, I suppose, help the occasion, and very hard to call. I probably will just give it to Offaly just because that little bit of hurt on the minor final a couple of years ago, and I think the crowd as well. Like, they're Wexford been up to play them in the Leinster final last year, and it was for young guys like, geez, they're like animals. Like the Offaly crowd, mad for success, and for young guys, it's very hard to deal with it. Like, so I think I'll just give Offaly the nod, and I think, look, they probably deserve it too. Of the two teams, they've been in, I suppose they lost the final last year, they lost that minor final, and I think they, third time lucky, they deserve to get one.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there, Kieran. I think a slight edge to Offaly, but Offaly are going to have to go the full 65 minutes here. They can't let history repeat itself and stop playing with 10-15 minutes to go. I mean, I think Leo O'Connor will be at pains to tell the Offaly kids to keep going until the end here. I mean, I think both coaches have done an incredible job this year. I mean, particularly Brendan Cummins with Tipperary as well. I think that Cork under-20 team was well fancied heading in this season, and to get the win by all means. I think it was an incredible achievement for him. But I think Leo O'Connor here, Rory, and I know you know him well, it's been a magnificent tenure for him on underage development here with Offaly. And look, it would be the icing on the cake really for Leo and for Offaly if they could pull this off on Saturday.
Yeah, look, they deserve it. I think this team deserve All Ireland silverware, whether it's this year or even, like as we mentioned, they still have a bulk of them next year. It's going to be a tall order. Like this Tipperary team, they went down and beat Cork well in the round robin. You know, this wasn't a one-off win over Cork, and this was a highly fancied Cork team that walked in All Ireland minor 3 years ago. And you know, a lot can change in 3 years, but you know, they had a lot of big names there in terms of guys that had All Ireland medals from last year. They had a chunk of that team still there. I know they lost Ben O'Connor, who would have been underage to Munster Rugby, and obviously is doing really well with the Ireland under-20s, and you know, he's lost his Ireland Rugby's gain, it seems. But like still, they were a formidable team, and for Tip to turn them over twice, albeit with a bit of luck the second time round, I just think they're going to be a tough nut to crack. And I'm going to play devil's advocate here, and as much as I'd love to see Offaly and Leo get an All-Ireland success, it's going to be tough. I just kind of given Tip a slight edge here.
Kieran, who are you tipping on Saturday?
I'm going to go Offaly. I think third time lucky, they definitely, they deserve All Ireland silverware. You know, they've been beaten in 2 finals up to now, 2 All Ireland finals, and I think that little bit of hunger at how that minor final went, I suppose that'll be mentioned a couple of times this week, I'm sure. So just going to give it to Offaly with the crowd they have as well. Definitely be an advantage to them. Yeah,
and I think for Tipperary, a run game has to be established. I thought against Cork they were a bit one-dimensional in terms of their direct ball into their half-forward line. No, they were trying to get Darren McCarthy into it, but they need a run game on Saturday night really to vary this out and really test this Offaly defence. I think it'll be a fantastic final. I suppose, guys, been a lengthy one tonight. Many thanks, Rory and Kieran. I suppose enjoyed the weekend's games. I suppose next week it'll all be to do with the Provincial Senior Hurling Championship finals and also Joe McDonagh Cup final as well, Laois and Offaly. So we'll have previews. Hopefully we may have a few special guests on as well to help us preview those big games. Until then, guys, have a great weekend. Enjoy the games and we'll chat next week.
Thanks, Mark.
Take care, Mark.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.